Sorry. At this point, I'd like to ask if there are any questions from any of you for any of our panelists. I'm hopeful there will be some. I can bring this to you. Okay.
Well, I'm just, sorry. I'm just wondering that, when you sort of do anything else, it prevents you from doing the other options, right? If you've got three options, you only get to pick one. So I'm wondering, what you feel like you've had to give up by taking a philosophy degree and what you...
I've actually, as I said, I work with peer mentors, and I've actually been in a number of these conversations called first year to first career. And one of the things that I talk about, or have talked about with regard to that, is that you don't have to make up your mind right away. In fact, I don't think by choosing philosophy, you would be giving anything up. I think you would actually be opening up your options. It may delay certain things. So hypothetically, if you want to go into medicine, you may have to it may take you a little longer than somebody who say goes right into taking all of the prerequisites. But it doesn't stop you from doing that. I seriously don't think that doing philosophy has kept me from doing anything I've wanted. In fact, it is just, as I said, opened up doors.
I can say something to that too. I never felt like I was giving anything up in my path in philosophy. And what I learned over time is that it comes back to the stories that we tell about philosophy and what it's useful for, how it's productive. And so when we tell a lot of stories, or we hear a lot of stories about how a philosophy degree maybe doesn't land in the kinds of, it doesn't land us in technical or money-making jobs necessarily. And yet when I sat down and looked at all of the skills that I had learned and all of the things, teaching is a sessional. You learn. I said I didn't have management experience, but I had management experience. You learn so many different things that when you sit down and kind of parse it out, you realize how you actually have all those skills that maybe you would have gotten in a different kind of school. And so honestly, at no point in my last 12, 13 years, with the different kinds of jobs that I took to support my academic work, there was no point where I felt like I had given something up. In fact, I had gained so much.
I'll just say two things briefly, just to kind of spin on what your question was asking, rather than sort of going the economic route. I would say that what you lose is your innocence. You lose sort of the blissful appearance that things are as they appear to be. But what you gain is so valuable that it's worth it. Tomorrow, my philosophy club students in high school, we're going to be looking at Robert Nozick's experiment machine. I'm really interested, experience machine. I'm really interested to see what their response is, to see what a student who's 15, 14 has to say about living in a world with suffering versus living in a world where you don't suffer and you're not particularly aware that there is suffering. So, I think you lose that, but in the process, what you gain, I think some of us find a career. I don't know that all of us find a vocation, and there's a really interesting nuance between those two words. When we find our vocation, we have that sense that our job, our task in life, the thing that brings us money, brings us a lot more than just money. And I would hope that philosophy would lead people down that path, and I believe it does, personally.
Yeah, well, one thing that when I chose to study philosophy that I lost out on was sleeping, I think. Kind of what Richard was saying, I think one of the philosophers that I studied, Hegel, once wrote that the way of philosophy is the path of despair. And what he means is this kind of that you kind of unplug from the matrix, as it were, right? You kind of, to a certain extent, realize how many of our kind of comfortable presuppositions about the way the world works, about the way that our economies work, and all these nice little stories we tell ourselves about how everyone's going to find a happy ending and whatnot, are not necessarily as certain as we once thought they might be. But again, as Richard said, I think that this is not necessarily cause for despair, but is a prerequisite for a truly authentic existence, right? It's once you wake up to a lot of those delusions that maybe have kept you in a complacent role, you can truly realize that it is perhaps up to you or within your possibilities to create the life that you want to live. But you have to realize that you're not living it first before you make that decision. So, yeah, I think that for me, that is something you can give up, is that kind of like unreflective, comfortable existence.
Any other questions? Yes.
Thank you. It's a question for Tom. Do you mean in the last sentence, you mean philosophy in general or existentialism?
For those of you not familiar, the philosophy of existentialism, which maybe you've heard the term, just kind of generally, like, it refers to specific thinkers, but generally it's kind of like questions about us as human beings, how we live our lives, why are we here, why do we suffer, what is our purpose, that kind of thing. And yeah, kind of what I was saying is very much an aspect of existential philosophy, specifically that idea of constantly, like Richard was saying, asking, how do I define myself this way, right? I like to think, you wake up every morning and we all have goals, we all have ideals that we want to strive to live up to, whether that is being a father or changing the world or, getting into a career that we want to get into. And it is easy to fall into unreflective ways of being that are not necessarily compatible with those values. So by engaging in a philosophical way of thinking daily, I would argue, it allows you to live more authentically to those principles that are important to you, and to question those principles constantly. Say, like, is this really something that I still value? Is this still a way that I want to define myself and my way of being in the world? So yeah, but yes, that would be more so up the avenue of, if those kinds of questions interest you, you might want to check out some existentialism, give it a Wikipedia or something first.
Are there other questions? I know there are people who have been tuning in all over, so I'm going to try to scan the environment for hands up. We have some more time. So, Jesse?
Okay, you guys have to actually answer this question and not just skirt it a bit. What was your least favorite aspect of studying philosophy?
Oh dear. My former professors are
No one wants to answer that one.
I think the sheer enormity of it, the overwhelming, endless nature of it, right? And the further, like, I, obviously with just a 3-year BA, I didn't go too far down the rabbit hole. I, to be honest, was afraid. It's scary. You get to a certain point where you realize, my goodness, one of my favorite quotes is this Isaac Newton quote. I'm going to paraphrase it because I don't have the mind to remember it offhand, but this idea that my knowledge amounts to but a pebble in the vast oceans of all there is to know. And at a certain point, you get so far with philosophy where you realize, wow, these are huge questions, and they require such intellectual rigor that at a certain point, for me personally, I looked in the mirror and said, I don't have it. I can't do it. It will break me. It is breaking me. And that point especially occurred when I was in symbolic logic with Sarah Hoffman. It destroyed me. I was just like, I cannot, and she was excellent. Excellent job, Sarah. I just couldn't handle it. It was too much for me. So for me, it needed to become less about abstract thinking, more about how I live my life and coming to reconciliation with the fact that I don't really know much at all.
Anyone else want to address that one?
Yeah, I could do there were lots of things I think that I didn't like about philosophy. You know, I was kind of the gentleman here was saying, you know, every time you make a choice, every time it cuts off, like there's crossroads and there's things that you can't do. And I found myself with philosophy, every time I took a philosophy of something course, a philosophy of, you know, physics, I wanted to be a physics major. I'm like, man, all this time I've just been reading books, but I could be like solving the problems of the universe, but I kind of want to start over. But now, and then I take a philosophy of music and I'm like, I should really be a composer. That's what I want to do. You know, or you take philosophy of politics and like, I'm going to drop out of school and like join the Earth Liberation Front because like this is such an important problem. And but I don't know, is that a bad thing? That's just kind of like when you go on you're listening to songs or something, and there's just like so many new artists you discover, you just want to like download all their albums or something, and it's awesome because it enriches your existence. Go out and go to like, I'd want to just go to all the student events and stuff and talk to particle physicists and ask them everything, just being like really fired up about everything I can learn about them, and watch all kinds of videos on YouTube. And for me, there's something that's kind of like, this gets back to the value of a philosophy degree, where it's like art history, say. Like, what does art history get you? Maybe a job in a museum or something like that, but really it allows you to grapple with a whole new way of experiencing art, right? In the same way that, like, you know, how much are people missing out on who, you know, like maybe some of your friends who don't really like beer, like what's wrong with you? Like, you're missing out on like one of the best possible human experiences. So likewise with philosophy, you're opening up whole new doors to ways of thinking about awesome, mind-blowing things. But that can be frustrating because you don't have infinite time, right? You're like, oh man, I really want to like learn every language and read every book possible, and also, you know, like climb mountains and meditate and really get into all kinds of crazy experiences. But we only have so much time. So that is kind of a bummer when you realize how many awesome things there are to do.
That's a good place to end, probably. We only have so much time.
Just as I think of it.
Okay, one more. Yeah, that's okay.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
Okay. This will be quick. The one thing that I did not like about studying philosophy was, at least when I was going through, the number of women in philosophy. There weren't many, and it does affect. And I'm so happy to see Rachel here on the panel as well, and philosophy professors who are also women, and it really, really is noticeable when you're a woman, when you're a person of color, that there tends to be a certain sort of student who is a philosophy student. That being said, I mean, I never felt like the men in my courses ever treated me differently. But it was something that I did perceive. I think it's slowly changing. There are things that people are doing to make that change. There are classes, the classes are expanding. There are certain scholarships out there for women in philosophy, because because there are a lot of, or very few women doing PhDs, or there had been, and now there are special scholarships that the Canadian government gives out. But that was the thing that I think I would say that I didn't like. Maybe not what you were looking for.
And I was just going to say logic.
That's two.
Okay.
Sorry, Sarah.
I loved logic, by the way.
I love logic too.
So everyone's different. But I think that's about all the time we have. So I just want to thank, on behalf of the Department of Philosophy, our panelists for coming out today and sharing with us their experiences. If we could just give them a round of applause. Yeah. And also thanks to all of you for coming out too. We really appreciate seeing you. Okay, bye.